Hi, this is Mark Birch with a quick revision of Macbeth Act 3, Scene 2. The scene begins with Lady Macbeth also reflecting on the significance of Banquo given the words of the witches. This echoes the situation with Macbeth in the previous scene. However, while Macbeth was certain, Lady Macbeth now seems to have undergone a change and seems absolutely uncertain. She begins with an interrogative: is Banquo gone from court? And she also then asks a servant to arrange to speak to Macbeth. All of the power seems to have dissipated from her character. Shakespeare gives Lady Macbeth a very short soliloquy, which might be structurally significant in itself, the shortness of the soliloquy perhaps mirroring how her power has now diminished. The antithetical parallelism of the opening line of the soliloquy is one that's based on hyperbole. We have the extreme contrast between the lack of true achievement and the enormous efforts made to secure the throne through the act of regicide. So you have this powerful contrast between naught and all. The dissatisfaction of Lady Macbeth parallels that of her husband following the murder of Duncan in Act 2, Scene 2. There's a sense of insecurity that dominates this. Lady Macbeth reflects that it would be better to be dead than to be unsettled by the murder that's been committed. And it's worth noting the really heavy alliteration of the ponderous "d" sound, which could be argued to complement Lady Macbeth's sombre reflections. You can hear it really clearly in "we destroy them by destruction dwell in doubtful." It's also worth recognising that the use of rhyming couplets could remind the audience of the stimulus of the witches in the fulfilment of this desire, or convey a sense of finality, linking the words to the death that Lady Macbeth sees as preferable, or the end of the efforts required to attain the crown. When engaging with her husband, Lady Macbeth talks as if she believes that Macbeth has been worrying about the murder of Duncan. He's been on his own with his thoughts and stressing about it. And this is really evidence of the decline in her power once again, and it's conveyed through the dramatic irony of the audience appreciating that Macbeth has been far from that. In fact, rather than reflecting on his own, he's actually been acting. He's been putting into effect the murder of Banquo, and Lady Macbeth is completely ignorant of this. In fact, it's her that's been moping around and worrying about the murder of Duncan and its effects. It's also worth noting that she states what's done is done, which echoes Macbeth's words from Act 1, Scene 7 when he says, "If it were done, when 'tis done," again representing that parallel that exists between the Macbeths, but the way in which now their roles have been reversed. Macbeth then uses the metaphor of a snake, saying we've scotched the snake, not killed it. Scotched meaning wounded or scorched. But this metaphor of a snake is something that's a motif repeated at various points in the play, notably with Fleance. The image is based on the idea that a wounded snake could heal itself, and the ineffective violence or the incomplete murders that have taken place, the poor malice, is endangered by the snake's original venom. Shakespeare makes the change in Macbeth to a kind of malevolent force really apparent at this point in the play when he says, "But let the frame of things disjoint, both the worlds suffer." In other words, let the universe fall apart. Heaven and earth suffer before he's allowing himself to succumb to the kind of terrible dreams that shake him nightly. This idea of Macbeth shall sleep no more that we heard earlier in the play has now apparently come to pass. He's suffering from terrible dreams. He can't sleep. Sleep being a frequently used motif to link to the idea of guilt. Those that are guiltless are able to sleep. Those that are guilty suffer from terrible dreams and are unable to have the peace of sleep. And it's interesting that Shakespeare employs a homographic pun based on the word peace. The two meanings being the peace of achieving ambition, being at rest in terms of what's required in the future, and then the heavenly peace of death. When Lady Macbeth tells her husband to sleek o'er your rugged looks, be bright and jovial among your guests tonight, she's once again calling on him to be deceitful. This reminds us again of those faces acting as masks to the heart. The theme of deceit being employed through the idea of false face must hide what the false heart doth know from Act 1, Scene 7. But Notice that it's Macbeth that's now saying this as well as Lady Macbeth. Again, that sense of their power shifting. In fact, he talks about deceit more than she does, and lies to her during the course of this. He tells her to let your remembrance apply to Banquo, present him eminence both with eye and tongue. In other words, look on him favourably, be kind in the kind of words that you use when you meet Banquo, knowing full well that he's already put a plan into place for Banquo to be murdered before Lady Macbeth can see him again. The kind of suffering that Macbeth's mind's plagued with is evident in both the exclamation that follows this and the zoomorphic metaphor that's employed. For his brain to be full of scorpions is to suggest the kind of pain and suffering, the poison that's inflicting his mind. Macbeth then employs lots of Gothic imagery. This kind of Gothic imagery has been employed before as he was about to murder Duncan, and it's the kind of thing as well that Lady Macbeth employed when she went through her transformation in Act 1, Scene 5. But what's interesting as well at the end of this is the use of euphemism. Macbeth says there will be a deed of dreadful note. Perhaps to hide the deed because he finds it distasteful, but I think it's far more likely that he's hiding it from Lady Macbeth. This is perhaps evidenced in Macbeth's seemingly condescending words to his wife, "Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck." We have a profound role reversal evident in Lady Macbeth as well, asking Macbeth for direction. What's to be done? She's turning to him. He now has the power. And it's also interesting to compare Macbeth's response when he states, "Come sealing night, scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day." Very similar to Lady Macbeth's "Come thick night" in Act 1, Scene 5. Both of them now seeking the aid of the dark. They are creatures of evil whose acts should be shrouded in darkness. Okay, ta.